Bat Force Radio.
Bat Force Radio is rated M for mature. Or should that be immature?
Hey guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio, the Batman and DC podcast with no limits. A warning, we will be going full spoilers on a recently released comic, so you may want to bail before we get to that point if you don't want to be spoiled. With us this week is Tease Us in New York.
Believe.
And I'm Robin Cross in Canada. And this week's guest is a romance author and now also a comic author, and the first person not named Sean Murphy to write a book in the Batman White Knight universe with the recently completed Batman White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, exploring the trajectory of Harley's life following the events of Batman Curse of the White Knight. Welcome back, Katana Collins.
Thank you.
And as I said your name, I saw you getting hit in the face with your cat's tail.
Yep. I was saying, like, she never wants to hang out with me, ever. She doesn't want to cuddle. She doesn't ever want attention or love until I am in the middle of like a podcast or doing something. See, here she's back.
Yeah. Oh, attention, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, hi.
Hi. Thank you for taking the time to come back and waste an evening with us again.
Yeah, I'm excited. This time, just me, no Sean.
Yeah, we got stuck with him last time, didn't we?
Yeah, because I'm a scaredy cat, and I had never done a comic podcast prior to that one.
But the two of you used to do your own show, so you had some experience.
Yes, yeah, I had been on other podcasts. I'd just never done one in the comics arena.
But speaking of the comics, how was your first experience in writing comics?
It was good. I mean, I had a great team. I had a really good support network. I personally think we put out a pretty darn good book. And it was just overall very, very positive.
Yeah, you definitely did have a good team that you were working with there.
Yeah.
And what were the differences between having a monthly comic come out versus having your novels coming out?
They're as different can be. I mean, I still tend to write them mostly like all together. I wasn't like still writing per se as the books were coming out. I pretty much had most of the drafts for all 6 issues done and written right around the time Mateo was like starting and finishing issue 1 and 2. So it wasn't so much writing each issue monthly per se, but the process of publishing is just so different. And it's also like, it's so funny to me the way comic book readers ingest stories, because it's like reading something 1 chapter a month. Mm-hmm. And reviewing something based on 1 chapter rather than the story as a whole at first. It's I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but it's just, that's a very different animal than a novel, you know?
Right.
Yeah, because the 26 pages of a comic book would probably fill up, 5-6 pages of a novel.
Oh, yeah. If that, yeah. Absolutely. But it's also like the story, like it's closer to 5 or 6 chapters of a novel. You know, or maybe 4 to 5 chapters, even though the words that you use are only a few pages, but like the actual storytelling and plot is probably closer to reading like 5 chapters at a time.
Yeah, because what you would normally have written in a novel, like a lot of the descriptions of places and people, and you painting a picture with the words, is literally the picture is painted this way.
Exactly. In like one little panel, that can be a page of a description sometimes. So
how long do you generally give yourself from the time of completion, or when you start storyboarding for a novel? How long does that whole process take before it hits shelves or publication? Generally.
Yeah, that's a good question. It can vary, but I try to like from plotting a book to hitting publish. So I write about 2,000 to 4,000 words a day in a novel. So most of my books are between 80,000 words and 100,000 words. So by that math, like typically it takes me about 2.5 to 3 months to write a book. And then I am a little obsessive about my editing process. So I take a long time like revising and editing. And I have about 3 different editors go through and help me and like revise it and work on tightening it. So I would say for me, from plotting a book to publishing, it's probably closer to like 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
But I know many, many authors who will just like, they have one editor who gives it a read through and then they publish within 2 to 3 months. I know some authors who write a book every month and publish a book every month. That would literally kill me. It would be, I would just be a big ball of stress constantly. But yeah, some people do it, and yeah. But for me, it's probably like 6 months, but I can write a book pretty quick. It's just the other stuff that takes me longer.
The aftermath.
Yeah.
Thinking about what you've done. Yeah.
Yeah, and then doubting everything you've done and then rewriting it a few times and then ultimately going back to the first draft anyway. That's right. A fun part of the process.
Now, not that you were obviously, you weren't doing it on your own, but there was a lot for you to handle coming into your first comic, because not only did you create new characters, adapted a character from the animated series in The Grey Ghost, killed a character, but you also fleshed out an event that had been hinted at in the previous White Knight volumes with Joker and Jason Todd. So this was where we saw the moment where Harley had to admit that Jack Napier had been replaced by the Joker and he was going too far now, leading her to get Batman involved. So was it always planned that this was where some of these events of the universe would be revealed, or did you find the story just growing into them during the writing?
A little bit of both. Jason Todd was sort of always mapped into the story, and having a bit more of that reveal be part of this story, that was always kind of part of the plan. And by design, so that it's sort of setting up Sean for future books as well, and maybe other writers. Some of it was a surprise as we were writing. Like, actually, both, again, we've already given the spoiler warning, so final warning, come back later if you're not ready. But both deaths of Hector and Lou were sort of a surprise to both of us. Lou came first. Like, we knew Lou was going to die. But it kind of happened, like I had plotted all 6 issues, and then I was sitting with Sean one night at dinner, and I kind of looked up from whatever I was eating, and I was like, I think one of the hyenas has to die. And the shock on Sean's face was priceless, because those who know anything about me know I am an avid animal lover. I have 3 dogs and a cat. I would literally rescue every animal I could if I was allowed to and not become like a crazy cat lady or raccoon lady, because I joke that when I'm 80, I'm probably going to rescue raccoons thinking they're cats. And I give Sean so much shit for killing anything, like any animal that he's ever killed. Like if you've read Punk Rock Jesus, I was livid at him for killing Cola. And he was like, "You're gonna turn around and do the same thing for all the shit you've given me." And I was like, I just think it really makes the story like that much more crushing for Harley. Like I think she needed it as her like kind of a awakening moment, or like her call to action to really go after Starlet. So that was sort of a surprise in the beginning. And then we had basically written all 6 issues and then realized that we thought it would be stronger if Hector died.
Yeah.
And so we went back and had to rewrite issue 6 to make that kind of tie together better.
Okay.
But initially, Hector was going to survive. And
That's funny because it was the opposite in my mind. I wasn't surprised that Hector went, but I was surprised that I texted you after reading it and said, does he really die?
I know. And I was like, do you really want to know that? Like,
yeah, you made me spell it out.
Yeah.
you literally made me spell out that I wanted the spoiler.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got quite a few of those messages and DMs of people who were like, but he's not dead, right? Like he's clearly not dead. And it didn't quite occur to me that it was left open-ended until I started getting those DMs. And then I was like, oh, I guess it isn't obvious, especially in a comic book world where, you know, sometimes, surprise, they're not dead. But
yeah, we tend to take it like watching a TV show or a movie. You know, if you don't see a body, they're not dead.
Yeah, no, he dead.
He's certainly dead. Now, I don't know if because it did happen right at the end of the second last issue, like you mentioned, it really gave Harley the motivation to really go after Starlet. But the way it felt to me when I started reading the final issue, because we start off with that flashback to the night with Jason Todd, the way I took it was that thinking about Lou after he passed was what was bringing her back into that memory of that night, because it was when they protected her from Joker.
Yep. And it was really them. It was the hyenas who not only protected her from Joker, but in my mind, convinced her enough is enough. Because as she was actually running back to stop the hyenas from attacking him, and Lou steps between her and Joker and Bud, and like licks the wound that Joker had created. And basically, like, since we can't make hyenas talk, in my mind, he was saying, you know, enough is enough. It's time to leave. Or that's her interpretation of what that meant. Yeah. So in her mind, they're part of the reason why she ends up leaving Joker finally.
Yeah, it was cool and unexpected to see the Jason Todd moment that we were already sort of fed a little bit of previously, to have it come as, like, I think there was an expectation that this book would sort of be a side story between the Batman volumes of White Knight. But we saw a big change occur to Batman's situation with him getting out of prison, not through legal means. Also, Jason Todd being brought into the universe officially now, on top of all the things that Harley goes through. So I know there's something of a roadmap for the upcoming volumes. I know what some of those plans were, but without getting into spoilers, did any of the events that you ended up writing in Harley change anything that was planned for the White Knight books, or lead to new ideas moving forward that this series might have created?
Definitely leads to new ideas. I don't think it changes, at least none of like Sean's sort of main line White Knight plans. solely because I knew kind of what the next story was, and his main line, that we were very careful to like work in the Easter eggs we needed and the setup for that. And in fact, there were probably moments that when Sean read a draft, he was like, oh, no, we can't do that because I'm doing this later. So, but in terms of like other spin-off ideas, yeah, like there was, there's definitely been talk of like some sort of Neo Ivy, maybe Harley spin-off, but focusing more on the Neo Ivy relationship. I've talked about it before. This is not actually in the works, but I love Zatanna, so I would really like to do a Zatanna story.
Yeah, she would definitely play well
like
in the universe.
A one shot would be cool for her, just to kind of get in the universe.
Yeah, exactly. I would love that. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there was. Well, I know like there's definitely been talks about like Batgirl, Nightwing.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing set in stone, nothing scheduled, obviously. But
we definitely need some more villains brought in, because he sort of cleaned house in Curse.
I know.
But yeah, there's still we still have like characters like Roz, and you know, a lot of characters are untapped in the universe that there's a lot of space they could fill.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think, because like I don't know the villains as well, but I remember being really, really grateful and happy that he didn't kill Ivy back in the day, because I really wanted her in the story, and I knew he had slaughtered a ton of them, and I was kind of like, did you kill Ivy? Like, can I please have her? And we just got really lucky that he happened to not kill her in that scene.
So you mentioned that there are ideas for maybe Neo, Ivy, etc. Do you have ideas in your mind for, are things like this something you would tackle?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet. I mean, I would certainly be happy to. I know the direction I would take the three characters and the dynamic that I like for them. In our story, I was really excited to have Ivy kind of be what's the word I'm looking for? Like a guiding light sort of for Harley. And since Harley's struggle has been a lot with like parenthood and being a mother and not really being able to merge all the different sides of herself, I thought it was really apropos for Ivy to be that person, because Ivy is very nurturing and very motherly, especially, well, mostly to her plants, or only to her plants. But I see her as a very like Mother Nature kind of figure. Yeah. And I see them as having a really special bond from days past.
Now, we did get a really different side of Harley than we've seen in most stories, given that, you know, we're seeing her as a mother now. Were there things that you specifically wanted to do with Harley because you hadn't seen them done before?
Yeah.
That, you know, thought that there were dimensions to it to add to her?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I am not necessarily the most well-read comic reader out there, but to my knowledge, we've never seen Harley as a mother. And I definitely don't recall, not only with Harley, but I don't really know of any superhero that's had postpartum depression. Again, they may be out there, so I apologize if there's a very famous book somewhere that does deal with that. But that was one thing that to me, it made the most sense, because not only is postpartum depression super common, but she had also just lost the love of her life. So of course she would be depressed and kind of struggling with this. And you know, in general, like Sean had kind of already set up a lot of who this version of Harley was, so I can't quite take credit for that. But still making her fun and hijinks and all the qualities about Harley that we love. We didn't want to lose that, but we did want to kind of ground her more and find a bit of humanity that, maybe. Well, and it's not that that's not in the other stories, because it absolutely is. It's just this is an older version of Harley, so she would be a little different,
Yeah, and we've seen her from the beginning of the first White Knight. We've seen her grow into who she is by the time of this story.
Yeah.
Kind of went through some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you also have the ability to kind of interweave and really kind of show her from day one, where she had this really raw looking costume and she looked kind of ridiculous, and she jumped out her window. Like, I really love seeing that day one perspective.
Yeah, that was a fun scene.
It almost looked like she was in PJs, like until Bruce, obviously like she was shopping around for the Harley Quinn outfit, but it was great to see like when Bruce gave her that suit towards the end.
Yeah.
Of like a bond between them. And,
yeah. Thank you. I also really liked, obviously a lot of the flashbacks focused on the origin of her relationship with Jack and the Joker, but it also, in a much smaller way, was the origin of her relationship with Batman.
Yeah.
And how he kind of always did care about her from the beginning. He worried for her. He could tell she was maybe like going down the wrong path by hanging out with Jack, but also he hit a point that he was sort of like, well, Jack may not be good for you, but you are good for Jack. And what do you do with that information? That's a tricky thing when you love someone.
And to think that she was good for him, and she was keeping him from going down roads he may have gone down. It's interesting to think about how much worse could the Joker have been if there wasn't someone there, compared to what he did become anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and in our world, or in Sean's world, I should say, I'm pretty sure, because like I'm trying to think about when we were like sort of plotting, but Sean was pretty clear that Harley is not a murderer in this universe. Like, she's never murdered anyone. Yes, she's like been part of crazy plans and heists and thieves, and she's maybe taken hostages, but she's never killed someone. And I can't remember if in his world, if Joker is a murderer or not.
I do remember Sean saying, I think it was back when he was on for the first White Knight volume, he was being specific that in this universe, the Joker had not done nearly what he has done in the mainline comics, because it had to be sellable that he could potentially be released from prison.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But again, I didn't want to speak out of term if I was totally wrong.
I think you got there, because it wouldn't make sense if he had done these genocides, poisoning water and killing thousands of people. No matter how sane he got, they were going to let him out of jail or run for mayor or any of that stuff.
Right, and that's why the Jason Todd thing was so poignant in this story, because I believe the mystery around that was, if he had murdered Jason Todd, that would have been the only person he'd ever murdered.
Yeah, it would have been crossing the line from just being a criminal into being a murderer. But I think he did end up doing that in the later. See, didn't he do that in White Knight or Curse? He must have crossed it afterwards. But Jason Todd definitely would have been the first. So yeah, that was a huge point, that, and especially for Harley, that she was not that person. She was not then, and was not on the road to becoming.
Yeah, that's never been her jam in this universe. In fact, it's what makes her leave him, or one of the reasons that she leaves him.
Yeah, and it was cool that we finally got to see this. And I don't know, somehow a surprise. I didn't expect that we would see the Jason Todd moment come in this story, but it turned out to be the perfect place to have it.
Cool, thanks.
So, writing comics for the first time, what did you bring from your experience in writing? What did you carry over, and what did you have to relearn?
It's very similar writing in terms of plot and structure and goal and motivation and conflict. A lot of that stayed the same. One of the, I think, harder things is, you kind of have to change your mindset from like a chapter book. Like when I plot my novels, it's like chapter by chapter, even though it's still the same 8-point plot device that I use. So like the nitty gritty plotting is different, and trying to think about each issue and like, what is the cliffhanger on this issue? And then how is each scene different in every issue? And the transitions are very different in comic books. They're much more abrupt, I think, than in like a chapter book. And just having to be succinct. That is really challenging for me when I have all the pages in the world to pour my little writer heart out in a book. And in a comic book, it's just like, cut to the last second. You're trimming dialogue to be as short as possible. It felt like to me. It's like that was really challenging.
It would be pretty easy to have so much dialogue on a page that the speech bubbles cover up all of Mateo's art.
Yes, and we don't want that to happen. But yeah, the amount of times that it was just like, trim this down more, trim that down more. Yeah, and I think coming also from an acting background for me, I love good dialogue. I love like hearing their voices in my head as I read it. But again, it's sort of like you have to balance that with, sometimes you don't need the dialogue because you have the pictures that are right there.
I was kind of thinking to myself, even today when I brushed up on some issues, that coming from such a strong writer's background, I feel like you have to give so much trust to Mateo to really create these visuals. Because I feel like as a writer, you want the reader to kind of imagine it, but now you're relying on so much on the artist to kind of bring that vision out for you.
Yeah.
It's a sense of kind of letting go, which I could imagine as a writer could really be a challenge.
Yeah.
Relying on someone to really reveal what you're thinking, and it's kind of like you're syncing with that person. And I think from what I saw, you guys had an amazing chemistry, but to me, I'm thinking that's a big challenge for someone that's just giving off a storyboard.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, to start with, saying like Mateo and I are amazing. Like we have great chemistry. I love Mateo. I love his art. And it is a scary leap to release that control. But it's also pretty freeing as well. Like, it's kind of nice to share that responsibility and to not have the vision of an entire project relying on you. And for me, what made it more seamless and maybe less scary was it's not just my vision.
Right.
And yeah, like, yes, I'm writing something down, but a true collaboration it's all of our vision. So even if I wrote something to be a certain way, or I don't even know, like a certain time of day or in a certain room, but if Mateo emailed me and he had a different idea of what that should look like, I'm more than happy to let that go, let that happen. Or we find like a balance between what he sees and what I see, as long as we can make the plot work moving forward.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't thought of yet. So this would have been really your first experience with handing your words to someone and then seeing them, having them send their work back to you, where they have put your work into something visual.
Yeah, it's a really cool and strange first experience the first time that happens. Like it must be akin to watching one of your projects come to life in a movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like just seeing the visual representation of words coming to life. It's pretty crazy. And even just like I knew what Harley looked like because obviously Sean had already drawn her, and we've seen many visual iterations of Harley through the years. But seeing Mateo's spin on our Harley, and especially like the kids, because that was the first time we really saw the kids drawn.
Yeah.
Other than like little babies, I think Sean drew them as babies, but that was pretty cool to see how he envisioned them looking.
And having them riding on the hyenas and things like that.
Controversial riding on the hyenas.
Was that controversial?
Only among like the talk of the team. Like there was a lot of discussion on like if that visually would work or how ludicrous is it, or like there was one kind of funny discussion about like are people going to be mad that that Harley's endangering her children's lives by riding on the hyenas. And ultimately we came up with the plan that like this is essentially like a mini fairy tale. Like the hyenas are, you know, fantastical creatures who are very aware and almost human-like. So it's not putting them in danger by allowing them to ride.
Yeah, no one would question it in a Disney film, so why question it in a comic book?
And, you know, we've kind of already established that Harley's not a great mom at the beginning, right?
Yeah, she's just kind of learning.
Yeah, like I mean, probably a lot like many parents, in that you're just so overwhelmed and you're like, whatever, you want to ride the dog? Fine.
Sure. I mean, it's totally relatable nowadays with this year. It's like, as a parent, you know, you kind of throw the rule book out the window because you're just trying to get day by day, and just sometimes you just have to go with the flow. And
yeah,
Harley, you gave her such a humanistic quality that's what you do in real life. There is no rules to follow.
Yeah.
To be a successful parent, you just be the best that you can be. So
yeah, absolutely.
I also loved how you, from the first issue, you had the hyenas referenced as her babies, her real babies, you know, like that's really Harley, you know, she loved them, and they loved her back, and they protected her. And that's really an important component of the story.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we touched on the new suit. So towards the end of the story, obviously you're already being spoiled if you haven't stopped listening by this point, if you haven't read. Batman gives her this new suit that he had made for, you know, something that's obviously it's black, you know, designed to protect her more. And as he says, you know, he's worried about her getting him caught. But first of all, I thought it was perfect that, of course, if Batman gives Harley a suit, it's going to be in this slick case that will have her logo on it. Everything's got to have the logo on it. So we're left at the end of the story with Bruce has presented her with this potential path for the rest of her life. You know, like a new thing to hear. That I'm going to offer you this opportunity, and I hope you'll make the most of this. Do you have in your mind what you would like to have her doing with that?
Yes. This is something that this is not in the works. It's not, to my knowledge, anything that's going to happen. But if I had my choice, because again, like Harley's struggle throughout all of this is like, who am I? You know, if I'm not a villain, who am I? If I'm a mother, who am I? If I'm like trying to be a detective right now, who am I? And she doesn't quite fit into any of it. But I think where she feels most comfortable is sort of being not a vigilante, but somewhere in between like private eye and vigilante.
So like she could sort of be the Jessica Jones of
Sure,
of DC,
that's a really good comparison. Yeah. And like
but without the alcoholism.
yeah, no alcoholism for her. She's been through enough. Like, give Harley a break. But yeah, like working with the GTO when it's needed, but also like bending the rules when that's needed. And we all know that can be a real slippery slope, especially in Gotham. But I think that's where I would see her going, is like not taking the job with Montoya, but still having a decent working relationship with Montoya as well.
And I love thinking about the potential that there is, because we have these two kids that are the children of Jack/Joker and Harley, what they could grow into.
Oh yeah.
That potential of one of them being, taking Harley's personality, or more the Jack side of him, and the other one could could have the Joker side.
Yeah, totally.
That could be an interesting family.
And that's definitely something we've talked about. I don't know how that fits into White Knight universe. Like, that's a tricky thing, because they, I guess it would depend on what age you write them in, but or if you still have Harley in it as the mom. But yeah, we've definitely talked about that. Actually, a little off topic, but have you guys been watching Superman and Lois?
I haven't seen that one yet.
I've heard good things about it, though.
Likewise.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. But it has that they have twins. Superman and Lois have twins. And part of that plot is like figuring out if they have powers. And it makes me think a little bit of our dynamic with them.
Yeah.
Powers. They're not like aliens or magical beings, but trying to figure out who has what traits.
I would be pretty ticked off if I was one of the kids and didn't have one of the powers.
Yeah, right.
And the other one did.
Yeah, like he has all the good traits or whatever, and
right. And what? I'm a good reporter. Fuck that.
you can fly, and I'm a good reporter.
I have to wear these glasses. That's it.
Right. I got Dan's vision, not the cool heat vision.
You think I'm going to be a reporter and not tell the world who my brother is?
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed the show. I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, the inheriting powers thing reminded me of, I've read the comic before, but it's a nice refresher watching the Invincible animated series. That's on Prime now.
Oh, nice.
I don't know that one.
So Invincible is a comic from Robert Kirkman. He's the guy that created Walking Dead.
Yeah.
So it's like a standard sort of, superheroes comic, but it's far more graphic and gritty. Like, heroes can be shitty people, and sort of like in The Boys, if you've seen any of that. But so you see a child of a superhero waiting to grow into his abilities. And then, the misadventures when they do begin that.
I'm a sucker for those stories. I love them. Like that's a way to win me over as a reader.
Yeah, check out Invincible though. It's there are only 3 episodes out now. It's on Prime, I think. If you have Prime, it's fun though. I think you'll enjoy that.
Awesome.
But to see Harley and Joker's kids, one of them could start growing into the Joker side, and she sees that in him. To see Harley maybe have a fear of what one of her children is going to become as she sees the Joker side in him.
Yeah, and that would be hard. That would be heart-wrenching too, because it's like, if you're a mother and this is essentially what killed or took away your partner, and then you watch your child start to exhibit the same characteristics. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's heavy.
Yeah, I'm quiet now because I'm just thinking about that. Yeah.
Rob is writing things on paper.
Paper. The one thing that I've noticed lately, when I do have to write anything, my hand barely remembers how to write things with a pen or pencil. It's so messy now. I always had messy writing, but it's horrible now. My hand doesn't remember what it's doing because I'm always just typing.
Yeah. Yeah, I still do a lot of handwriting though. Like I have notebooks and journals and feel like anytime I'm plotting, I tend to do it by hand, not typing. Like I find it easier to I do it on index cards so I can like lay out all the scenes and move the scenes around from the floor in the order that I want them to be. I'm a very analog person in that way.
I feel like when you have especially like for me, when I scribble something down, I want to get the idea out so quick, so it kind of reflects it in the scribbling. And I feel like you have to learn to slow down a little bit because we're so used to typing and just getting an instant output. You know, we have to kind of learn to do that again and just slow it down because my handwriting is atrocious.
Yeah.
The next day, I'm like, what is this? I have to like decode it.
Yeah.
Like a doctor's writing.
Yeah. But I wanted to add before too, when we were talking about the crossover with potentially like Harley having thoughts of Jack, I think that's something that's so powerful with this whole White Knight universe that you can always go back to these scenes with Jack and they can just keep on going. And Jack will always live in the series, even though he had died in the second iteration. But he's going to live forever in this series because Harley's always going to pin back to him and think about the times that they had together. And especially in the first and second issue, where you create these scenes of where they first met with each other, like that's such a strong bond that you've created. And I think your background with being a novelist, you've kind of created this romanticism about them that people really wanted to witness and see. And that's something that you personally, I feel like, brought to the table that no one else could do.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was definitely part of the story I was maybe most excited to tell was their love story for that reason. And it was the most comfortable part for me to tell. But also challenging. And one of the reasons that we made the choice to have them meet as Jack and Harleen rather than meet as Joker and Harleen is because I was finding it very hard for my own writing ways to have them fall in love or to have her fall in love with Joker, being Joker already. Like that was, I was just having a hard time wrapping my head around it. Plus I felt like that story's been done already. We've seen that. Yeah. So why would he tell the same flashback that everyone else has told, you know?
One of the scenes that always sticks with me is when she's at Axis Chemicals and he's trying to hide her and he says, you know, of course, you know, I'm proud of you. You know, you have to be out of here because you can't be seen. You're acclaimed at Arkham and what you're doing for Arkham is great. He's like, you need to leave as soon as possible because I don't want you to be caught up in this crossfire. So you see this part of Jack that really does love her.
Yeah.
You know,
no, Jack, I think loves her with all his heart. And part of the reason why I think he left initially was because he knew he would bring her down with him. And because he discovers the medical journal that she writes about him. And he gets so mad that he like flies off the handle. And I think in that moment where he's like maybe about to hit her, he's so mad and feeling that transformation within himself. That's when he chooses to leave. And it's not because he's really that mad at her. It's because he's mad at himself and he doesn't want this life for her. Yeah. That scene was actually supposed to be a lot longer with them at Axis Chemicals. Like we had to cut it so back, which again, like hurt my little writer heart. But like there was like a whole section where like she runs away and Batman sees the like hat that she was wearing and like gives it back to her later at the hospital. Yeah, I think there was like supposed to be a kiss scene. Yeah, anyway, it got cut. It got cut like 5 pages down, which it had to. The whole issue was already way too long, but
There's probably a lot that you could have written there, though, with the two of them, because we saw them meeting and we saw their their sort of end, and so there's a lot of room for middle stuff there, where we could see them, some Mickey and Mallory kind of stuff for
Yeah.
Jack and Harleen.
Yeah, we kind of skip all the good years, right? Like, there's not a whole lot of the fun, happy couple of years in that flashback.
Yeah, I mean, I could. There's so much more potential just to bring Jack. I could see Harley go into her journals and start reciting, and that could just be a whole side story.
Yeah.
To me, I don't think he's going to go anywhere. He's
Yeah.
a critical part into the whole White Knight universe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of comics too, is like, yes, he is dead. Like he's not coming back per se, but we still get to see him and we still get to experience him.
Right.
Yeah.
So for anyone who has gotten their first sample of your writing with this book and might be interested to read more, like, let's say, what are you working on currently? What's your next thing that people will see from you?
Yeah, so I am still writing romance, but obviously that's not everyone's cup of tea. I have a romantic comedy novel coming out soon. But in terms of comics, I am working on a new project that is going to kind of take place. It's not any superhero, it's indie, but it's going to take place in Salem. And I'm not I don't know. I don't. Am I allowed to talk about it? I don't know. I mean, it's indie, so I don't know. Here's what we'll do. I'm gonna tell you about it, and then I will ask Sean if I need you guys to cut it out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not. He has nothing to do with this project other than he just knows the industry better. So he might say like, "No, don't announce this yet," or he might be like, "Yeah, whatever, talk about it." But so it's called The Familiars, and it's about a kid, like a teenager in Salem during the witch trials, and this kid doesn't realize that her aunts are all witches and they're all abducted for the witch trials, and all that's left are these familiars who have to team up with this niece of the witches to save them all.
That's so smart.
Nice.
So kind of fun. It will be, kind of typical Katana writing, like sort of, dark but still full of heart and fun. Lots of animals because that's what I do.
Cats.
But how many of them are you going to off in the process?
I hope none. I am hoping for none.
So is this one, is this going to be like a crowdfund like Sean has done?
That's what I'm leaning toward. But I also haven't really shopped it around yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's another nice advantage of having someone as experienced as Sean. Like you sort of have an insider who can tell you, yeah, let's crowdfund this, or let's take this to these guys and get them to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and he knows so much about crowdfunding just from his few that he's done, the couple that he's done. And I don't think we would need much to get it off the ground. And it's always nice to have control, right? Like,
yeah. I was about to say that, like, it's not even about like who's going to put it out or the money. It's really about your artistic freedom.
Yep.
That's what it's about at the end of the day. And you want to get the story out. You want to get your vision out. And sometimes that gets filtered a lot. So in a story that you feel so passionate about, crowdfunding is the way to go, because you want to give to the people, what you want to give. So.
And we were really fortunate with the White Knight Harley that we weren't really in that situation of being, micromanaged or controlled or having to change a ton of stuff. Like it really was just a great experience. And our editor Maggie is wonderful. Like I have nothing good but good to say about the whole experience. But I am a little nervous at the idea of having to do a comic book of like something that's canon, or like having to do like a fill-in or of a character who's got this like epic long story that you're like coming in and you have to adhere to all these rules and things that have already happened. Like that to me sounds terrifying.
Well, you jumped in on one of the highest profile characters there are, so I think you can hopefully be pretty well past that fear after this.
Should I? I was married to the guy who created it, though.
But yeah, that has to be what you said, that you didn't. So there weren't really things that you were told you couldn't do or anything, by editorial. And I have to think that some of that comes from one, the White Knight universe had already been successful anyway, doing its own thing, so they feel comfortable with that. But also, I'm sure some of that comes from the fact that they know Sean does what he wants anyway.
That's probably true. That's probably true. But also, like, I knew the story really well. Like, I knew this world really well already, so I wasn't coming in sort of not having read, 80 issues prior that like this one thing happened and that's why you can't tell this part of the story. Like, yes, it's a world that's already been created, but it's a much smaller pie than, say jumping into like a Wonder Woman tale. And I just think it's the kind of thing, if you're a writer, you just get used to. Like, you just kind of have to do it, and eventually it'll get easier.
And
or
I
not.
I don't know how much people realize too that, I don't know how much it was, but I know that you were always around while the White Knight stuff was being created. Like Sean did mention in the past how, he would go to you with questions and things and get advice. So yeah, it's not like you came into this cold. You knew the universe well.
I read all of the issues before they were even art. Like, I read drafts of them early on. So like, I've seen the growth and the whole process from, even just plotting. Like, we would sit together and he would hash out the plot, and I would not like do it with him, but I would certainly like listen and throw in, a few tidbits and advice when it was relevant. And I always joke that I'm like his dialogue editor. Like, I'll go through and on some of his drafts, like, look at dialogue and be like, no one talks like that. Like, we need to rewrite that line.
Did he throw any of that at you while you were doing this one? Give you any of?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I think we talked about it last time we were on the show, but the whole egg roll fiasco.
Oh yeah.
That is still like one of our stupidest fights was over if that egg roll should hit Duke in the face or not. But yeah, he's definitely come in and like, particularly with the men, like Bruce, there were times that I had a tone in how Bruce was talking that he was like, that's not really what I picture Bruce saying. Bruce is more reticent than that. So he would sort of come in and tweak that kind of stuff. And Duke as well. I find like Duke has that similar, like, quiet brooding, but the one-liner under his breath that's very funny. That's not meant to be funny, but it just is. Yeah.
I don't know why. Sometimes when I look at Duke in the pages, I just think of Terry Crews. If White Knight gets the movie treatment, I'm putting up Terry Crews right here.
I like that casting.
And I think he would steal the show.
Yeah. Who else would you cast?
Oh, jeez. Well, let's see if we look at Starlet. I've never considered this before. I'm just going off the top of my head. If we were casting Starlet, I don't know. I want to say maybe Mila Kunis.
That's a great casting choice. Yeah.
What have you thought about any of that?
For Harley, I think Kristen Bell would be a really good choice.
Oh, that's
great.
That's good because she always wanted to play Harley.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I remember seeing an interview with Kevin Smith somewhere where he was saying that she was telling him she wants to play Harley, and he was like, "Well, cool, but I don't get to make that decision. I don't know how much power you think I have." But yeah, I guess she's liked Harley since she was a kid or something.
Well, we need to get her a copy of this White Knight book.
Dude.
Yeah, she looks perfect.
Yeah, she'd be great. And she's like the right age. She's also a mother in real life. I think that she'd be able to really connect to the character.
And it's funny because...
Who would Jack?
Would be a good Jack.
It's funny, White Knight is one of the things that has had the rumors go around, obviously unfounded rumors that there was going to be a movie developed for it. And I forget what website it was, but they were running a story that White Knight was being developed for a movie, and they were putting Matt Damon as Jack Joker.
First of all, if that's true, that's news to me.
Yeah, right?
That's nothing I've heard.
Yeah.
Matt Damon, I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, like he could I don't know that I would see him. I don't know if I would look at him and see Jack or Joker, but I mean, he could definitely perform it.
Yeah, it's funny if this person, not Matt Damon, the person I'm thinking hadn't already been in Batman movies, I think Aaron Eckhart would be a really good choice.
Yeah.
But he's already been Two-Face, so
that doesn't matter too much. So many people have crossed. Look at J.K. Simmons.
Oh, that's true.
I still can't not see him as Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man because no one will ever be more Jonah Jameson than he is. But now he's also Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of people double dipping.
I love J.K. Simmons. He's amazing.
Yeah, he is
He's really good. Such a fantastic actor.
Who would your White Knight Batman be?
Oh. I don't know. I wonder if Sean knows. I wonder if Sean's thought about this.
I feel like we probably did go over this with him in the early days.
Yeah.
But that would have been, like 4 or 5 years ago.
God, has it been that long since the first one came out? Oh my God.
It's got to be there because you figure, one issue a month.
Yeah. Plus time in between starting the next one. And wow. Okay. Man.
Is it what, 3 years maybe? Is it 3 years?
Yeah, maybe something like that.
3 or 4 maybe.
Sean would know.
We're batting this around like we don't have the internet available here. Let me have a look.
Or it's not like I don't have Sean that I could literally like shout down to the kitchen or like text at the moment.
My guess is 2018.
Let's see.
Early
2017 and 2018.
Wow.
So we're on the 4th year now.
Yeah,
so
coming up. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like that much time has gone by though. I can still remember the excitement that was going around when it was announced. When White Knight was announced.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were going crazy.
Yeah.
And look how far it's gone now.
I know. I've always loved it. I mean, duh, of course I did. But yeah, I remember when he was telling me the ideas for it, and I was like, that sounds really cool. I feel like, okay, casting of Batman, this might be a really stupid choice, which you can tell me. But what about John Hamm?
That I was actually thinking the same thing. Like John Hamm has been tossed around for Batman before in fan casting,
Oh,
but
I didn't know.
something
Okay.
about the White Knight world, I just think he works perfectly for.
Yeah, like I think there's something very like charming, obviously. You need him to be charming, but like a little dark, but also able to curse while putting together a crib. I mean, maybe
Oh, I
not
forgot
actually
about
curse, but in my mind, he was like cursing because he couldn't get the damn crib together. Um, yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad we were on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he seems to fit really well, like, to be like Sean's Batman who, hasn't shaved and, like
Yeah,
he'd have that stubble on under the cowl and
yeah.
yeah, he would nail it.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Sean later though who he would cast because I can't believe we haven't actually like Sean and I don't think I've ever talked about this. I'm sure I've mentioned Kristen Bell because I'm like more than a little obsessed with her. If I could force a celebrity to be my best friend, it would be her.
But we do need a Joker.
oh,
Oh yeah.
And that gets hard now because as there are more and more iterations.
Yeah. And it's also hard because like this is sort of an older like they have to be a little older in this story.
Yeah.
So it's not like like the Robert Pattinson probably wouldn't work for any of Batman or Joker in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe we get into like Adrian Brody or something, like because they have to have those angular features to do Joker.
That's true.
Yeah, he has the body type to be Jack Napier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think another good choice, and this actually came from Neil Adams a few years ago. Neil Adams was suggesting Matt Smith. If you guys know who Matt Smith is from Doctor Who.
Oh yeah, I didn't know the name until you said Doctor Who.
Yeah, he's tall and long and lanky, and his natural hair, like his hair when he was the Doctor, if you just dyed that green, it looks like comic Joker.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's one thing no one has ever done in live action a Joker that looks like the comics. Well, we had aside from Jack Nicholson,
right?
With the prosthetics and everything, but I think there's so many actors out there that you could just dye their hair and put paint on their face like they did with Joaquin.
Yeah.
But, they still didn't do like the comic look, but I think if they just did comic Joker look, there's so many like that was what I hoped we were going to get when they first cast Jared Leto. When they announced him, I thought, oh, perfect. They could make him look just like comic Joker, but then they didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
They went as far away from that as they could.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's give him belly tattoos and a gold chain and shave his head and just
they just went nuts there. Anyway, wow, yeah, this really took a turn, but we could probably stop wasting your night at this point and let you get back to all of your work and whatever animals are crawling around on you.
I think the cat went to sleep somewhere. She had stopped trying to get into my lap, so I guess that's good.
Well, again, we appreciate the time very much. Thank you for coming on to chat with us about it, and thank you for giving us the book, too.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for reading and supporting. I really appreciate it.
And for anyone who hasn't picked it up, if you're trade waiting or whatever you were doing, definitely get out there and read it as soon as you can. And watch for Katana's other stuff as well, if it's in your lane.
Yeah.
But and we'll wait for, I don't know if we're going to be able to leave that in or not, so I'll just be sort of vague with it. We will watch for an announcement on your comic project.
Yes. Keep an eye out for that.
And I guess we will leave it at that. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everyone, for listening and reading.
Our absolute pleasure. Well, enjoy the rest of your night. say hi to Sean for us.
I will. Thanks,
And
guys.
we will talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you.